Who the heck is Noden, and what is going on with his continued appearance in Dalinar's visions? In this video, I'm going to break down what we know about this elusive historical figure and walk through what a popular kind of theory in the fan base that Noden is actually Adonalsium. And stick around in this one to the end because I think I have 3 reasons that really strengthen that theory. But this video will include spoilers for all of the Stormlight archive up until the end of Wind and Truth. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, a quick recap. What do we know about Noden? First, he is a king on Roshar. He lived about roughly 5,000 years ago. And he is the author of the in-book Way of Kings, which is basically like a philosophical treatise that has 40 parables. And that treatise is one of the key sources from which Dalinar draws inspiration across the events of the 5 books. Number 2 is that Noden does not actually appear to be his real name. It's posited at one point that his real name could be Bombadil, and Noden is actually kind of a holy name. But it's also posited that Bombadil itself could also not be his real name, and we don't actually know what it is, and it's lost to history. He is also connected to the Radiants in a way that isn't fully drawn out yet. He was a Surge Binder, it appears from his appearance in Dalinar's visions, he's seen at one point with the symbol of what became the Knights Radiants, and he lived during the time that either the Knights Radiant were formed or right before that period. But that connective tissue isn't entirely clear. Did he found the Knights Radiants, for example? Or was he a member of them, or were they inspired by him? I'm not quite sure. And similarly, it's also not quite sure what his connection is with the Heralds. He does appear to have known them. At one point, the Stormfather confirms that, and the Stormfather also confirms that he knew Noden directly by saying he was a good man. But again, it's not quite clear what that looked like in practice. And Noden appears in 3 separate visions of Dalinar over the course of the 5 books. First, he appears as, in his youth basically, he appears as a youthful man in regal white and gold robes with dark hair pulled back into a braid and a short beard that comes to a point. Later, he appears in the second vision. He's older, but he's more glib and whimsical than he was in the previous vision. And he's kind of similar almost to Taravangian in some ways. In the vision, he is focused on making shin bread, and he haggles with the grain trader. So he's kind of a whimsical character. And in the third vision, he is described as having silver hair and a pointed beard, and this time he has gray robes embroidered red and yellow. But these visions, the main reason that he's so strange in these visions is that he's unlike other visions that the Stormfather places Dalinar in. In these ones, Noden is able to interact directly with Dalinar. And so whereas other visions are generally recreations of scenes that have already happened, and so there's limited kind of actual interaction, in the visions that Noden appears, he appears to be a person, almost like a cognitive shadow. And in some ways, I liken him in my mind to a character if you know Lord of the Rings, a character like Tom Bombadil. Because there's a lot here that just doesn't make sense. He doesn't seem to fully follow the rules of Roshar in the way that we know them, and he has this kind of otherworldly feel to him. And even Honor, by the way, doesn't quite know what to make of Noden. At one point, Tanavast, who is a vessel-carrying Honor, describes him as such a curious individual. Perhaps I should have insisted that he accept immortality, basically only so that Honor could study him. And so here's where I think the theory that he could be Adonalsium really picks up steam. First is that Noden's defining feature, like Adonalsium, is that he gives up power in service of peace. In the Way of Kings, the entire kind of premise of Way of Kings is that Noden gives up his throne and walks across Roshar. And the reason he does so is to experience the kind of the joys and the lives of people living on Roshar in a way that he couldn't as a king. So he does so in service of peace and understanding. And that's actually quite similar to what we know about Adonalsium. Whereas I think it's kind of like popularly assumed that Adonalsium was shattered or killed without his consent, there's a little note in Wind and Truth that I think actually suggests that he gave up power willingly, also in service of peace. And specifically, Tanavest explains that a clash of gods could be a terrible thing, and that he learned something profound when he refused to fight Odium, was that is why Adonalsium had not fought us, i.e. implying that Adonalsium willingly gave up his power to avoid this major clash of gods that would have destroyed civilizations. The second reason that I think Noden being Adonalsium could be a legit theory is that he's routinely associated with a soft white, not blinding light. And that evokes something that Dalinar feels, which is this warmth beyond. That seems like it's not like stormlight or sunlight, but that it can only come from the place beyond, which in my mind is very much associated with some sort of a deific light. And the third that really seals it for me personally is the symmetry of his name. So to understand that, you have to understand that the H in the Rosharan alphabet is kind of wild, it can be anything. And so Noden, if you actually break it down, can be spelt as N-A-D-O-D-O-N, which reads left to right and right to left as having Otto both ways. And I'll put this up in the video so that hopefully it'll make more sense. But basically Noden is symmetrical with Otto going both ways. And I think to me that's kind of a slam dunk. So what do you think? I'd be interested in thoughts on any of this or anything that you think both helps prove or disprove this theory. And if you like this kind of content, please hit like and please subscribe. I continue to post as regularly as I can on all things Cosmere. Thanks everyone.